Welcome to my channel, which is all about war stories. This is my first video, and today we will hear a war story. The boats that saved an army 338,000 men. No army left to save them. This story is in 3 segments, so just relax and enjoy the story. In May of 1940, the entire British army was trapped on a beach in France, pinned against the sea with nowhere left to retreat, and a German army closing in from every direction but the water. Military experts in London expected to save, at most, 30,000 men out of the hundreds of thousands stranded. What actually happened over the next 9 days became one of the most unlikely rescues in military history, carried out not by warships, but by ordinary fishing boats and weekend sailors. This is the story of Dunkirk. Not the battle, but the evacuation that followed it, when a defeated army was pulled off an open beach under constant bombing by a fleet that included pleasure yachts, river ferries, and civilians who had never been anywhere near a war in their lives. Segment 1. Trapped against the sea. By late May 1940, German forces had advanced through France faster than anyone in Allied command believed possible, cutting off hundreds of thousands of British and French troops and pushing them back toward the coastal town of Dunkirk. There was nowhere left to go. Behind them was an advancing German army. In front of them was the English Channel. The beaches filled with exhausted soldiers standing in long, exposed lines for hours, waiting for ships that weren't yet coming in nearly enough numbers, while German aircraft strafed the open sand with almost nothing to stop them. The harbor itself had been damaged by bombing, which meant large ships couldn't dock directly. Soldiers had to wade out into the shallows just to reach anything that could carry them. British commanders back home, looking at the numbers, quietly prepared the public for a catastrophic loss. Winston Churchill himself later admitted he expected to save perhaps 30 or 40,000 men out of the more than 300,000 stranded on that coastline. Segment 2. The call goes out. With the Royal Navy's large ships unable to get close enough to the shallow beaches, the Admiralty made an extraordinary decision. It requisitioned almost any boat in Britain capable of crossing the Channel. Fishing trawlers, river ferries, lifeboats, and hundreds of private pleasure yachts were called into service almost overnight, many of them barely seaworthy for a hostile crossing. Many were sailed not by trained naval crews, but by their own civilian owners, who volunteered to pilot small wooden boats directly into a war zone under constant bombing to pull soldiers off the sand. These vessels became known afterward as the Little Ships of Dunkirk. Many made the crossing more than once, returning again and again into range of German bombers with no weapons of their own beyond the boat itself and the nerve of whoever was steering it. Segment 3. 9 days against the odds. Over 9 days, this improvised fleet of more than 800 vessels evacuated roughly 338,000 soldiers from Dunkirk's beaches and harbor, more than 10 times what military planners had initially thought possible. It was not a victory in any traditional sense. Equipment, vehicles, and supplies worth millions were abandoned on the sand, and thousands of soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured before they could be evacuated. Some little ships were sunk outright, taking their civilian crews down with the same risk faced by trained sailors. But the survival of that army's manpower meant Britain still had trained soldiers to rebuild around, instead of an empty home front facing invasion completely alone. Churchill himself later stood before Parliament and warned the public not to call it a victory. Wars aren't won by evacuations. But the men and boats of Dunkirk turned a near-total disaster into something Britain could still fight on from. And that distinction mattered more than almost anyone realized at the time. Subscribe for more, and tell me in the comments which historical event you want covered next.